crime fans love the suspense, the twists, the pursuit of justice. But what if I told you that the stories you watch unfold on network TV are only part of the battle? Behind every headline-grabbing case is a journalist fighting for access, navigating cutthroat competition, and facing off against stonewalling detectives, reluctant lawyers, and even powerful institutions that don't want the truth exposed. Claire St. Amant has lived it. As a producer for 48 Hours and 60 Minutes, she spent nearly a decade tracking down killers, uncovering shocking twists, and sometimes even putting herself in danger. From the murder of Chris Kyle to one of America's most prolific serial killers, Claire has sat face to face with the criminals who made headlines. In her hot off the press new book, Killer Story, Claire pulls back the curtain on the world of true crime television, revealing stories that never made it to air and ones that still haunt her. And she talks about the ethical tightrope journalists walk every day. Claire, welcome to Killer Psychologist.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I'm excited. I have your book hot off the press, but I'm glad that you sent me the audio tape. Already got into the first 2 chapters, and I love that you tell your own story in your own voice, and I love it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was really an interesting experience to not only write a book, but to record the audiobook as well. I feel like I relived it all whenever I was in the sound booth recording, every word that I'd written.
Yeah, I have listened to a lot of audio books or books on tape during my life, and it was how I got through my commute to school. And back in the day, I would go to the library and rent CDs, and I would rent like 6 at a time, and I would put them in my player, and they were all like true crime books, but I would decide whether or not I was going to listen to it based on how the person's voice was, if I liked the narrator. And unfortunately, sometimes I would take it out, eject it immediately, and just never listen to it. And it's only not because I didn't want to listen to the story, but because of the narrator they had chosen to read the story. It was kind of incongruent. It was sort of off track. And I think it's so important to find a narrator that can tell your story. And so tell me about your journey. Did you already intend to tell your own story?
So it is funny because when I was going through the contract for the book, one of the things they put in there was that I could audition for my own audiobook. And I was like, all right, who's going to be better at reading my life story than me? I would love to know. But that's just kind of standard, contract fare. They have to have that in there in case the author has some type of voice issue but I was really excited to get to read the audiobook because it's not just any book, it's a memoir, right? So I'm talking about my experiences, my love story with my husband, my career, like everything, the birth of my son. So having someone else read that would have been pretty bizarre.
Yeah, I wish this book was around back in the day when I was a young girl trying to figure out what career path I wanted to pursue. In fact, when I was in college, I took this psychological test. It was a screener to find out what type of career you'd be good at. And I took it. And I remember investigative journalism being at the top. And at the time I thought, I don't even really know what that is. I mean, is it exciting? Is there mystery? And I didn't have anyone that I knew in that position at the time that I could look to and find out more about that career field. And now it's all starting to make sense. Like, because I was listening to you and I'm like, wait, she has this job. It's so interesting and exciting. And it sounds a lot like what I do. Going to the jail, interviewing people, like being, sneaky, getting the scoop, getting the stories. And I'm like, wait a minute, should I have become an investigative journalist?
Well, life is long, Dana, there's still time. You can totally make a pivot here.
Thank God. It's all starting to make sense now. Like maybe finally I have my microphone. It's like,
there you go.
But I never knew it was so exciting. And I think my career path could have gone a different way had I had someone like you, sharing your experience firsthand, like tapping into this field.
Yeah, I hope that young journalists read this book. That's one of the, my primary audience for it is anyone who watches true crime television or listens to true crime podcasts. But I definitely see, aspiring journalists as an audience for this book. And I feel like it's such a unique window into not only what it's like to work in national television for network news. I worked at CBS for most of my career, but it also shows the journey from local media to a startup news website and then to the national media. Because for most people, you don't start at the top, you don't start at the national media, and you have to find your way through lots of different media jobs, before you end up somewhere like 48 Hours and getting to tell these really complicated, fascinating, twisted murder stories.
Well, and I think that's what makes your story so relatable because, you had to jump through the hoops and you kind of slide your way in there, and you didn't always quite follow the rules, but I kind of found that very relatable. Like you're still in it to get the story. And I actually really had never really thought about it from an investigative journalist perspective of from their perspective, how do they get the stories?
Yeah.
And, how do you beat out the competition? Like some of these cases, right? To get an interview with someone who's incarcerated, like what is it going to take for them to talk to you? And, why you over this other person? But it's like you're getting in there early on and building those relationships and, getting them to open up to you. Well, a lot of people that are interested in listening to killer psychologists, a lot of people are really interested in forensic psychology. And there's a lot of females that are trying to figure out what career path to take. And I'm finding that being an investigative journalist is it's diving into the world of forensic psychology and putting yourself in those positions where you get those interviews. And there's a lot of interest in this career field now. I'm just curious, you've been doing this a while now. Are you seeing that more people following in your footsteps? Is it interest? Is it more females interested in becoming an investigative journalist?
So there's actually a lot of negativity about becoming a journalist in today's world. I found a lot of discouragement for people to go into the media right now, just because the economics of it are pretty rough, and a lot of newsrooms are closing or they're shrinking. There just aren't as many media jobs as there used to be. But I still think it's the greatest job in the world. And I always encourage people that if you think you might want to be a journalist, give it a shot, because you'll know right away if it's for you or not. I worked with a lot of people in different newsrooms, for newspapers, magazines, online, television. And it's just very obvious if you don't enjoy this kind of work that you won't do it for long. Because for the most part, it's not a glamorous job. You don't make a lot of money in the beginning. And so it really has to be something that you love to do. And then if you love it, eventually, after you put in the time and you cover all these great stories, you'll have these bigger jobs and better opportunities and, to go on to. But it's a challenging sell in a lot of ways to get people to want to go into journalism right now. I know because I've started teaching a class on podcasting in the journalism department. at my alma mater, Baylor University. And a lot of the students are going for the PR track, the marketing track. And we feel like it's, you know, based in large part by the fact that jobs in media are shrinking, and they see a lot higher paychecks in PR and marketing. And a lot of times that just turns people away from the media field. But I think that if more people would realize how much fun there is to be had in the media, how rewarding the job can be to tell these stories, that you get to be the first reporter to tell this story, it's really exciting. I talk about how when you're a journalist, your job is on display for everyone to see. Your failures, your successes, it's a public facing job. And so there's a lot of pressure there, but there's also, a lot of satisfaction.
So you've crossed over to podcasting.
Yeah.
And maybe that was easy for you to transition to since you were already so vocal and public. Tell me about your podcast.
So my podcast is called Final Days on Earth with Claire Sanema, and I have 3 seasons out. It's deep dives on cold cases. And so I take one case per season and I follow the story wherever it takes me. And I look at these unresolved deaths. So questions of, was this murder? Was this an accident? Was this suicide? And so I wanted to talk about the cases that were too complicated for an hour of television. And so the podcast allowed me to have as much time as I needed to go deep on these cold cases and really look at all possible angles and talk to as many people as I could. And I really enjoy, putting the podcast out there and then listening to see who comes out of the woodwork to want to talk to me about their case. And so I always have bonus episodes where people I didn't expect to talk to me, that they contact me and say, I know something about this case and I'd like to, tell you about it. And so I'll do a bonus episode with, different people. Sometimes they're witnesses to the case. Sometimes they're friends or family members. And so that's been really rewarding. And yeah, I love being able to talk about these under the radar cases that people might not have heard of, where someone is still saying, justice has not been served. And after 3 seasons of that, I got the idea to do a spinoff podcast called Justice Pending with my true crime bestie, Susan, who lives in New York. And so I'm here in Texas, and we talk about the cases that keep us up at night. And it's really like us workshopping what cases could potentially be a future season of Final Days on Earth. But it's a weekly chat show. And so we're trying to do it every week in 2025. And then in 2026, we want to come out with a new season, scripted, serialized, of Final Days on Earth, a deep dive on another cold case. But for now, we're talking about a new case every week.
Wow. So as far as the cases that you go through, are you getting the whole criminal file, the autopsy, everything?
Oh, yeah.
And are you getting this through family? Are they reaching out to you and presenting cases and then asking you to get justice for their family?
So, yes, I usually have someone in the victim's family who comes forward and says, we don't think justice has been served in this case, and we want you to take a deeper look at it. And we want to get answers that, we haven't been able to find so far, and we haven't been able to get through the traditional justice system. So I also go to whatever law enforcement agency is investigating the case, and I always ask them to participate. I've had a mixed bag of results with that. My first season, they did not participate. I was able to get a special consultant who had worked for a different agency and had given, had access to the file and had looked into it. That was on season 1. But seasons 2 and 3, I had cooperation from law enforcement on these cold cases, which was really fabulous. And they talked to me about their investigation. And I was also able in all 3 seasons to use the original police interviews that were done on persons of interest, witnesses, suspects. And so you'll hear those audio recordings in all of my episodes. I use clips from the actual police interviews.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think that can be one of the challenges is getting law enforcement interested to assist you. And I know it can be difficult, especially with cold cases that, but it's interesting. I was talking to someone yesterday, actually a couple different people recently whose cases were resolved through a podcast.
It's
So
amazing. Yeah.
cases. And in another cases where you get someone to go on your show that's a suspect and they actually just start spilling the beans and sharing things. And then it's incriminating. The district attorney listens and they get this information. So, have you thought about getting some of those folks on your podcast and, any suspects and see what they want to share?
Yeah, definitely. I've tried, to speak with whoever will talk to me related to the case, whether it's a suspect or, victims' family, investigators. And so, I've talked to people who've been suspected, of these crimes. A lot of times, most of the time, they don't want to go on the record. They won't agree to do, an on-camera or recorded interview with me for the podcast. But I even find speaking to them off the record is extremely helpful and interesting to me. I always, take notes. I'm always hopeful that someone will talk to me on the record about these cases. But yeah, it's really the dream that you could get the actual suspect to talk to you on the podcast, right?
Yeah, you're like a secret private detective working for the police. So you're taking all this notes. You could be feeding them information.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I feel like with the cold cases, there's no statute of limitations on murder. So you can always be charged with a murder. There's no people say, getting away with murder. Well, as long as you're still breathing, you could still be charged. Like there's always that possibility.
So do you have some cases in mind that you want to go after and maybe help solve?
Yes, I mean,
yeah. I think so. You've written their first book. Are you going to have a series or maybe like a television series to go with this?
I would love to. I feel like it has all the makings of a television show. I was, of course, a television producer, so I wrote it kind of scene by scene. And, each chapter could really be an episode of a television show, a scripted drama about the life of a true crime television producer. So, I love The Devil Wears Prada, the fashion journalism story that, turned into the movie that was been very successful, as well as The Morning Show on Apple TV, which was based on Top of the Morning, written by Brian Stelter, a journalist who, looked at all 3 major morning news shows at, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And that's what they used to create this television series was his book. And so I see this, killer story as very much a television ready, book. It could very easily be adapted into a television show about 48 Hours, Dateline in 2020 and what the producers do to get the stories on the air. So, you've got all the drama of working in the media, plus you have murder. So I think it's a winning combination.
I love The Morning Show and I love Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
And she is a genius when it comes to her business strategy, which she takes authors and turns them into movies. And so I think you should partner with her.
Yeah, Reese, if you're listening, I would love to partner.
Hey, Reese, yeah. So what are you working on right now as far as any plans for true crime docuseries.
Yeah.
I mean, you got so many stories and connections, and everybody loves true crime. Um, it it's the one thing that's not dying down in this market. Like, true crime stories are selling, and it just never goes out of style.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm going to let the cat out of the bag just yet, but I do have a television show in development about serial killers. And so that to be continued, that conversation. But I am working on a television show right now with a major network. And in addition to that, of course, working on my podcast, Justice Pending, looking to do a new season of Final Days on Earth and promoting killer stories. So I've got a full murder plate, Dana.
Yeah. And plus, you're touring and you're doing speaking events, and you seem to be pretty booked. Getting, I don't know how you're doing it all, actually, because I just connected with you on Instagram, and you're doing in person book signings, and it's blowing up. I mean, your book just came out. Like, I just got this in the mail, and we just happened to connect.
Yeah.
And I caught your title, and I immediately was like drawn to it. Like, I want this. I got to get my hands on this. I like the title. Was like, okay, I got to get to know her. I think we connected on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Which is, you've actually recently quit your job and are doing this full time now.
Correct. So I left CBS News in 2022 to develop my own television shows, to continue my podcast, and to write this book. And so I've been doing all those things. There's so much, of the creative life that goes on in private, right? So it's really exciting and surreal for me to be able to share these projects now with the world, because for so long it just lived on my laptop. So I really am just saying yes to as many things as possible right now, and just trying to find a space on the calendar. I'm doing things on the nights and weekends and whenever people are available, just because I really believe in Killer Story, and I want, as many people as possible to know about it. And I think that, the discovery problem, we talk about that a lot in podcasts, that there's so many great podcasts out there, but how do people know they exist? And I feel the same way about books. They're just wonderful books that are sitting on the shelf waiting to be picked up. And so I'm trying to do my part to tell people to go read Killer Story, go listen to the audiobook, because I really believe it's a one-of-a-kind book. And so I'm no rest for the weary. I'm doing events all across Texas. I just booked my first out-of-state event in Florida, and looking at doing Chicago, New York. So it's an exciting time.
Wow, you're my hero.
Thank you.
Someday, you think about writing a book. We all have these stories in our head or things you want to share, but to actually make it happen and get it out there, and it's just exciting to watch you grow. And I'm here to follow your journey.
I appreciate
and
it.
Watch this come to television. It seems like you've rapidly accomplished a lot, and I think it's inspirational for a lot of young females that are interested in going into this career field.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm so grateful for the years that I spent working at CBS and working in other newsrooms, because I couldn't have just started out, on my own, starting my own production company and doing my own shows, and without having first worked in traditional newsrooms. But I got to say, quitting my job and becoming my own boss has been the best experience. It's definitely the hardest I've ever worked in my life, because I'm working for myself and I'm very demanding, but it's worth it, and I love getting to say yes and to have the power to do things like this, because, there's no one I have to ask permission, right? I get to do what I want to do and how I want to do it. And that's pretty special.
Yeah, it's only been a couple of years. You're out on your own. But are you getting a lot of support from the people you used to work with, or they're just like, how are you doing this?
Well, I mean, it feels like it's been a long time since I've had something, out in the public, because for a long time, for years, I was developing these things, just in my home office, trying to get them to the point where I could go out and shop them and take meetings and, sell them. But in order to do that, there's so much legwork that has to go into it. So it's definitely been a journey. I've definitely had some dark nights of the soul and wondering how it's all going to work out. And it's just really gratifying to have the book out in the world and to see it doing well and getting, lots of great feedback from reviewers. And, it was named an Amazon editor's best new release in nonfiction. So that was super exciting. I mean, I'm a first time author. Like, I don't take any of this for granted. Like, I am so grateful for every review, every interview, that request that I get. I'm just really happy that I get to live my dream and talk about my book.
Yeah, I'm amazed. First time author, and you're just blowing up and people love it. And so I'm just excited. I'm here to support your journey. What other projects you got going?
Man, I think that's about it. It's definitely keeping me busy. So yeah, this is my full-time job now.
So what's next for your book tour, and where are you headed to next?
So let's see. I have an event coming up on March 18th on Baylor's campus with the journalism department. And then I'm going to be in McKinney at Neighbor Books. And trying to think after that, I know I have an event in San Antonio and San Marcos and I think Grapevine. Yeah, there's a new bookstore in Grapevine that I just set up a signing with. So I'm going to be a busy girl.
Wow. Any chance you're coming to California?
I would love to. I will keep you posted. We get new invites every day. So I would love to come out to California. Maybe we could do a joint event together.
Oh, that would be fun.
It would.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm excited to promote it for you. And it's been exciting to meet with you. I know we chatted for like almost an hour the other day, and
yeah,
I'm glad to finally connect with you in person again. But thank you so much for your time. Where can people find more about you, your websites, and how to purchase your book? I just purchased mine from Amazon.
You can purchase it everywhere books are sold. If you go to killerstorybook.com, I have links to all the different major booksellers. Go to your local bookstore and ask them for Killer Story. And if they don't have it, they will order it for you.
I like to multitask. Audiobooks are my favorite. So I'm glad you did that right away so that people can access your book through listening.
Yeah, so the audiobook is available on Audible. And you can get it there and listen to it right away. And also the Kindle ebook edition. If you have an e-reader, you can get it right now. You don't even have to go anywhere.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. For episode details and merch, check out killerpsychologistpodcast.com. And for forensic services, you can book online at psychologydr.com. That's psychologydoctor.com.